Well, good evening.
Wow.
Welcome to the Bartow History Museum's special evening lecture and exhibit opening. We're glad to have you all out here to join us this evening. I tried to get some archers to come, but we couldn't get them up many. Glad you're here to hear a special talk with David Archer and our exhibit opening. Before we get started, let me give a couple of upcoming announcements. If you're not familiar with the programming of the museum, we do 2 lectures just like this each month, and a lunchtime lecture and an evening lecture. And our next Lunch and Learn will be on April the 16th. That's a Wednesday at noon. Joe Head, where's Joe? Wait a minute. Joe's going to be here to give a special talk on Asa Candler and the connections of Catersville, Coca-Cola with Catersville. So that's going to be a real intriguing talk. We're looking forward to having Joe come talk about that. And then on April 24th, Thursday evening at 7, Justin Earle will be here. Justin is the owner of the new the Jerks of Catersville, the new soda fountain here in downtown. And he's going to come talk to us about the history of soda fountains and about his new soda fountain just down the street. And if you haven't been, you should go. In May, we've got a couple of great special events. On May the 3rd, our annual History Hustle 5K. I know everyone in this room runs, right? Everyone in this room walks, so you can do both. The History Hustle 5K is a great fundraiser for the museum. It's also a fundraiser for the Roselawn Museum. We've been partnering with them on this race for about 10 years now, and so I encourage you to come out and join us for a fun morning of walking around historic districts of Catersville. And then afterwards, you can enjoy the May Market there at Roselawn. And then on Saturday, May 10th, a week from then, we're going to have an embroidery workshop. If you're interested in needlecraft and embroidery arts, that's going to be a great workshop with Leslie Bronson, who works here at the Grand Theater. More information on those events can be found on our website in addition to tickets and registration information. Just in time. Well, we're pleased to welcome David Archer here this evening. David grew up in Catersville. He graduated from Catersville High School in 1960, the University of Georgia in 1965, and Emory Law School in 1970. He returned to Catersville and opened his law office in 1970. He was elected to Catersville City Council in 1971 and served 2 terms until December of 1975. He waited. He then became city attorney in 1976 and is still serving as the city attorney, but recently, because he retired, asked to become the assistant city attorney. And when I asked him to come talk about the history of Catersville for our special 175th anniversary exhibit, I had several people tell me he was around for all 175 years.
That's true.
So I said I had to use that in my intro.
Okay.
But please join me in welcoming David Archer.
All right. All right. Thank you. I'm honored to be able to stand here at my age and still do these things. But I want to tell you a little bit about the history of Catersville, and I can't do it justice in the amount of time that you're going to want to be here, so we're going to move fast, okay? Ferris Carter, for whom Catersville is named, was one of the wealthiest men, if not the wealthiest man in the state of Georgia in the 1830s. He had a large estate in Milledgeville. He had a large estate up in Murray County at a place called Carter's Quarters. He would travel back and forth between his plantations. And the story is, it's wrong, but this is the story, is that he would stop by a stagecoach stop that was owned by Nathaniel Derry Lewis, who was an Englishman who moved to this area before Catersville was here. He founded a little community and he named it Birmingham. And he had a store and he had a stagecoach stop. The story is that Carter would stop by and jokingly suggested that he changed the name from Birmingham to Catersville. And he says, well, I don't want to do that, but they're about to build, with the railroad coming through here, they're about to build a town just north of here, and maybe they would name it after you. Well, they did, and they named it Catersville. But he was not just a plantation owner from Milledgeville and a plantation owner from the Chatsworth area. He actually was in cahoots with the engineer that built the railroad, the W&A, the one goes through town right here. They were designing where to build that road, the route for it in the 1830s, and a guy named Stephen Long was the head engineer, and I've got a copy of a letter between Stephen Long and Ferris Carter where Long was telling him where the route was going to be. Then Carter went around and bought up all the property along the railroad route, including about half of what became Catersville. So he wasn't just a guy riding through town. He owned about most of the town. This is a map of plat of what the city of Catersville was in 1850 when it was originally incorporated as a town. And the very center of it is the depot. So Catersville consisted of a 1 mile radius from the depot. Now, and the railroad was completed through here. I think they got through to Catersville around 1845, maybe 1846, and they completed it all the way to Chattanooga, from Atlanta to Chattanooga in 1850. Well, in 1854, this is a sketch of what the original depot looked like. We still have some of it, but most of it's gone. We'll talk about that later. The Civil War first hit Bartow County. Well, it used to be Cass County, but by 1862, it was already changed to Bartow County. This is the locomotive, the general that was involved in April of 1862. There was a group of Yankee spies. They stole the general in Big Shanty, Kennesaw, and they drove through Catersville, they drove through Kingston, and they eventually got caught, and they all went to prison. Some of them died. Some of them, they got the first Medal of Honor given by the United States government, those that survived. This was the Yonah, which was a locomotive that was owned by Mark Cooper, Mark Cooper's Iron Works, Edward Iron Manufacturing Company. He had built a railroad 2 miles long from the Western and Atlantic Railroad right at the Etowah River down to his iron works. The Yonah just happened to be sitting and available when the Confederate pursuers of the Yankee spies that had stolen the general. So they got the Yonah and they drove some distance, I think maybe all the way to Kingston, is that right? And then they got another locomotive. So the first real thing that happened in the Civil War in Bartow County was this event. But in May of 1864, Union troops advanced into Bartow County. To my knowledge, this is the only photograph of Union troops actually stationed in Bartow County. You know of another one, Joe? I do not. I think it's it. I found that on the internet. And it says that headquarters of General George H. Thomas near Catersville, Georgia, and he was one of the major subordinates under General Sherman. Came through here, swept through here, and originally in May of 1864, he came through. In November of 1864, he wrote an order for his troops to burn Catersville and Catersville, and Kingston, I think, also. So Catersville was destroyed. Catersville was the county seat. That's where the courthouse was. That's where all the buildings were. That's where most of the people lived. Sherman burned it to the ground. So what are we going to do? We don't have a courthouse now. He burned it down. All the records except 3 volumes were burned, so we don't have any deed records beyond that period of time. So there was a referendum in 1867 to determine where the new county seat would be for the newly named Bartow County, because they changed the name. Long story, I don't have time to tell it. So the referendum, just by a few votes, Catersville beat out Cass Station. So the deal was that the Catersville residents had to raise the money to build the courthouse, and they took pledges, and they built a courthouse. Now this, after Sherman left, and he burnt Catersville and Catersville, this is the only photograph that I know of a building that survived Sherman burning, his troops burning the city of Catersville. That was located where the ballet studio is now. Used to be Lay's 10-cent store, corner of Public Square and Main Street. And that business operated for several years. That building was torn down and the current building was built. He also, this is the bridge on the Edgewater River. The piers are still standing. You see them every time you go down 41. This bridge was burnt when Sherman left this area. He had his troops tear up the railroad tracks from Catersville to Atlanta. 45 miles of railroad tracks, including burning that bridge. But he wasn't the first one to burn it. Retreating Confederates had also burned it. So it was actually burned 3 times and rebuilt. And those piers were used until about 1945 when Lake Allatoona was being built and they rerouted. First marshal of the city of the town of Catersville was Captain J.D. Wilkerson. And he served from 1868, right after it was, the county seat came here until 1891. He died in 1907. The city of Catersville has a much larger force than one man now. That's the earliest photograph I know of this building. This was taken in the late 1800s. It was completed in 1869. And it was built from pledges that were raised by mostly Catersville citizens, but some folks that lived in Bartow County. The reason all those trees are there, I suspect, is because the reason they left this building and abandoned it as a courthouse in 1903 was every time a train would go by, these windows, they didn't have air conditioning. These windows were open. Those trains would come by, the noise, the soot, everything. The jurors would be trying to do what they do. The lawyers trying to do what they do. And they couldn't because of all the dust. And so they built a new courthouse in 1903. Now this was the city park. It's right across the street from what is the 3-story City Hall building now. That park was founded, they call it the Founders Park, because in 1872, Catersville reincorporated not as a town but as a city. And in commemoration of that, this park was dedicated, and there were oak trees around it that were planted by the aldermen, they called them then. The city council members and the mayor planted those oaks. I think there's 1 or 2 still standing. Most of them have been cut down. And that park in 1960s was made into a parking lot. In the 1870s, there was another railroad besides the state-owned W&A Railroad. There was the Catersville Van Wert Railroad was incorporated. They started building tracks in the 1870s. And the reason, this is kind of a joke, they changed it from Catersville Van Wert to Cherokee Railroad after Catersville Van Wert Railroad went bankrupt. One of the reasons it went bankrupt is the Republican governor, Governor Bullock, and his cohorts stole about $200,000 in bonds. They were indicted and tried in Atlanta and acquitted. They weren't guilty. This was the depot of the Catersville Van Wert Railroad, then the Cherokee Railroad, then it became the East and West Railroad, then it became Seaboard Airline, and it operated for many, many years. They had built that depot in what the Founders Park, in the north end of it, and the L&N Railroad that had leased the state-owned railroad sued and said that that was a trespass, that it was on state-owned property that they had leased. So in the 1920s, that was torn down. The reason I've got a picture of Oak Hill is one of the main duties and responsibilities that the city council members faced in the 1840s, 50s, 60s, all the way up until the 1870s was a problem about people being buried in wrong places. Oak Hill was owned by the Ebenezer Methodist Church, which became the Sam Jones Methodist Church. In 1849, they moved to where they are now. Not in that building, but in a much smaller building. And eventually the city bought and created a city-owned park for burying dead people. And a lot of dead people had been buried behind what was then the Baptist church, which is that two-story brick building across from Sam Jones' house. There was a two-story brick building there that was then the Baptist church, and they had a cemetery behind it. And where that cemetery was, you got all those houses there now on Church Street, right at the end of Church Street. And the story is, and I hope it's true, that they dug up the dead Baptist, and they took the dead Baptist and they buried them in the Methodist Church cemetery. Yeah, I don't know how they got away with that. So in 1877, Cartersville's getting where it's got to start giving some services. This is a photograph of the 1877 Volunteer Fire Department, and I have tried to figure out what building that is. I'm just not sure. Maybe the depot, but I've never seen a picture of the depot with that kind of work on it. This is 1885 Sanborn insurance map of downtown Cartersville, and the Sanborn maps were created for insurance purposes, and they did it all over the country. And this shows what Cartersville downtown looked like in 1885, and if you can see, all right, you see Market Street. Market Street is now Cherokee Avenue. They changed the name of it. But where the Grand Theater is, to the left of Market Street, you see that's vacant, where the Grand Theater is. But next to it is where the X is, was a livery stable. And I'll talk more about that livery stable in a minute. Wait a minute now. Okay, and this is 1887, and it was an auction to sell off downtown property, and it shows the lots that are available. And you can see the center. In the center is the depot, much smaller than it was at a later date. But that the center of town was the depot. You again have Market Street that was changed to Cherokee Avenue, and interesting at the corner of Market Street and Wall Street, it shows a hotel, and I'll show you what that hotel looked like in a little bit. And in the 1880s, the city of Cartersville contracted with a company called the Catersville Water Company, and they built this building on the Etowah River. It's down where Thompson Weinman is, that area. That building's still standing, but it's not standing very well. Much later, the city moved they don't take water out of Etowah anymore. They got outtakes coming out of Lake Allatoona. That building was originally funded to be built by Sam Jones, the evangelist. He was going to create a female college, and he couldn't raise enough money to do it. He raised enough money to build a building, but eventually in 1887, the city of Cartersville bought that building, and they started the public school system. First public school system started in 1887. That school building was the Catersville High School up until 1953. In 1904, the American Textile Company bought a large tract of land, and they built what became known as ATCO. And they built a village around it. They had schools, they had a swimming pool, they had tennis courts, they had all kind of recreational facilities, and they operated their own school system separately from the city of Cartersville school system. I think in 1957 this was annexed into the city, and that's about that time that Goodyear that took it over sold these properties to the individual property owners. This hotel, I don't know when this thing was built, but I want to believe, and I do believe, it was here in the 1860s. In Sherman's memoirs, he talked about when he left Kingston and came to Cartersville, on his way to begin the march to Savannah. You know, it didn't start in Atlanta. It started in Kingston, Georgia. The first night, he spent the night, he wrote in his memoirs, on a porch overlooking the telegraph lines that were cut, ceasing all communication with the North. I think that's the porch. Later, this was remodeled into the Braven Hotel that the city tore down, by the way. This is the earliest photograph I know of downtown Catersville, besides that one I showed you of the department store that Sherman forgot to burn down. And this is looking east on West Main Street. Notice the dirt streets. And that on the left, that tall building would be the building I showed you that Sherman forgot to burn down. And then this one, late 1800s, again, dirt streets, wood sidewalks, looking West Avenue. Today, Sam Franklin's store would be on the right. Egan's Bakery would be on your left. And again, in the distance, you can see that 3-story building that Sherman forgot to burn down. In 1903, folks were sick and tired of this building, having court in it, and breathing smut and dust and noise and all that. So they built this courthouse, and that was the main courthouse for Bartow County until 1980s. Sometime they built the new courthouse, and it is still used for many county functions. This also in 1903, the Cherokee Women's Club, private group, built the Mary Mumford Memorial Library. It originally was operated as a private library for its members. Later, they opened it up to the public. In the 1930s, the city bought it and created a city-owned library. And then, sometime in the 70s, I think, that building got in the way of advancement. So they tore it down, and they they extended the old city hall into this area and tore that down, and it's a parking lot now. I have a personal interest in this photograph. This was Calhoun Brothers Mercantile about 1904, and it's located at the corner of West Main Street and Irwin Street, where later First National Bank building was built. And my interest in it is personal. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Yeah. On the left is Joseph Calhoun, who was the first president of First National Bank. On the right is my grandfather, Simeon Lanier Archer Sr. I think we have a Simeon Lanier Archer. Raise your hand if anybody's name is Simeon Lanier Archer. That's who you're named after. And in 1905, they tore that building down, and they built this building. And then, of course, in the 50s and 60s, when everybody wanted to cover up beautiful old-time facades and cover them up with aluminum, the First National Bank Board of Directors decided it'd be a real good thing to tear those columns down and get all that ugly architecture under aluminum, and they covered up with aluminum. Thank goodness a private individual has purchased that, threw the aluminum away, put the columns back up, and it looks pretty much right now like it did then. 1916, the city brought electricity to its citizens. They bought a generator, and they started running wires to provide citizens with electricity. And this is an actual photograph in 1916 of city crews climbing those poles and running those lines. I didn't know what this was until about maybe an hour ago. I'm serious. I have always, they've got this hanging up on this wall over here, and I talked to Trey. I thought this was a sketch, a diagram, a plat of the city electric system, and I thought it was 1916, but it's not. Because down here, if you get a magnifying glass, you can read April 1906, and you can also read lamps. So that, something came on, and I said, oh, wait a minute, that's not electric system. In the 1890s, the city contracted with a company called weird name, the Orient Illuminating Company. And they actually converted gas from coal. And it was a process that the patent was held by somebody who lived here, Arthur O. Granger, for whom Granger Drive, Granger Hill. He had the patent for that. Had nothing to do with the city contracting with the Orient Aluminum Company. By that time, he had made all his money selling building these type plants to convert coal to gas all over the country. Then he came to Catersville and started mining. But in 1953, the city of Catersville created its own gas distribution system, and this plant that illuminated the lamps. That's all they did. They run gas into homes and businesses. It was the Orient Illuminating Company, and they illuminated those dots where they had gas lamps all over town. And I didn't know that till just a minute. I figured it out. In 1907, the city had increased its water capacity, had bought from the Catersville Water Works Company the water distribution system, and Reservoir Hill was built. This reservoir was built in 1907. They call it Reservoir Hill, and it has a lot of people that grew up here know it about it for reasons other than water distribution system. I'm told, and I don't personally know this, but rumor has it that a lot of high school students used to go up there and park. And also, they must have been swimming in the reservoir because they got that sign up. This is a great photograph, 1914. What you see what you see on the right is a three-story building with balconies. That became the Davis Hotel. That's where in 1885 I showed you that diagram, and it showed a hotel at that location. So one had been there since 1885. And then the Grand Theater is right here, the two-story building. And you see something up above it, a roof line that does not go with that building. That was the livery stable that I showed you on the map. It said it was a livery stable. Well, it wasn't originally a livery stable. You don't need a building that high for a livery stable. Joe, ahead, tell them what it was.
It was an erecting building for railroad box cars, because we had in the center of town a manufacturing business to build railroad cars.
Yeah. And that building, after they went out of business in the 1870s and it became a livery stable, the livery stable caught on fire. I want to say 1927 was it, that the livery stable caught on fire and burnt the Grand Theater down. Oh. But some of the Grand Theater remained. Some of the exterior walls remained, and by 1927 they had built what we know as the Grand Theater now. Had a different marquee. I'll show you a picture of that one in a minute. But some of the wall that faces Cherokee Avenue, you can look at old pictures and you see that's the original wall. In 1916, City Hall was on Public Square. The guy on the right, I think, is Mayor Paul Gilreath, and people that grew up here know the Gilreath family. They, bunch of them, and then in 1917 they built this building that the city decided to tear down a few days ago, and that building housed the police department, the fire department, and City Hall. When I was elected and was on the city council in 1972, we met upstairs in that building for city council meetings. But it got in the way. In 1917, the city started installing a sewer system. I mean, we're getting big time now. I mean, everybody's got outhouses all over, and so now we're putting in a sewer system. And this is an actual photograph of the crew installing that sewer system. In 1918, the city, wait a minute, I think I missed one. No, I missed. dead gone. I had a photograph of a horse-drawn wagon. I must have deleted it by mistake. That was a fire engine that predated this 1918 truck that was bought, the first motorized. But this truck, this engine, is still at the public safety building. They've restored it. Every now and then they crank it up and drive it in parades, and it's beautiful. This was originally the post office, built in 1921. It is across from the Gold Dome Courthouse. It now houses city office buildings, and I think they decided not to tear that one down. In 1904, the Bartow County Fairgrounds were down on South Irwin Street. They had moved from a location that they had bought in the 1860s, late 60s, where self-recycling is now, was the Bartow County Fairgrounds. But in 1904, this is where it is. If you see that tall tower thing in the center, that's where the Orient Illuminating Company were making gas out of coal, and it required that long smokestack, I guess you'd call it. And I remember it. I don't remember when they tore it down, but I remember it being there. It's not there anymore. Got in the way. In 1923, the city of Catersville and the mayor, Tinsley, decided to buy the fairgrounds and make it into a city park. And it was called Tinsley Park. And this is one of my favorite photographs of all time, because I actually know a lot of the people that were in this. This is in the 1940s at Tinsley Park. Tinsley Park had a swimming pool. I learned to swim there. They had clay tennis courts. They had a baseball fields where the Little League played. They had football fields where both Cass High School and Catersville High School, before the mid-50s, played their football games there on different nights. And then this, they had no dress code. But this is a photograph of the championship in the 1940s, and that's Thomas Champion putting. And these sand greens, they were sand. They weren't greens. They had no grass. They put sand down. You see how dark it is? And they put burnt motor oil on them to make them. Yeah. And it had nine holes, and it was there until the city decided to do away with the park and turn it into a industrial zone. Early 1900s. This is Main Street coming off of Public Square. Notice the dirt roads. The building with that thing out on the front. I don't know what you call those, but that's where the ballet studio is now. It used to be Lay's 10-cent store, and I can remember that wasn't, it rotted is the reason they tore it down, and it was there until I want to say late 60s maybe. 1925, the city started paving, and they paved that same area. See the thing I don't know what you call up there. That's the ballet studio building, and they're paving Main Street. 1926, they started running wires for a telephone system, and originally the telephone system was owned by the Aiken family, Warren Aiken, Morgan Aiken, that family. Warren Aiken told me when he got out of University of Georgia, before he went to law school, his summer job was running wires up telephone poles. Probably he may be in that picture, but I couldn't spot him because his uncle and his daddy owned the telephone company. In the 1920s, the depot was enlarged. Basically, it's the area that's still there now. All the rest of it was torn down. But this picture was taken from the Founders Park with that fountain there, and it was before 1927. And the reason I know that is because in 1927, Cooper's Monument was moved from its original location when Lake Allatoona was being planned to be built, and they didn't want it to be underwater, so they moved it and had it between where this picture is, and then in 1960s they wanted to pave this, do away with the beautiful fountain and all the other stuff and pave it for parking. So they moved the monument to up to the Allatoona Overlook, and now it's in what we call Friendship Plaza. I want you to see what the marquee used to look like on the Grand Theater. I remember when this fell. I didn't see it, but it was 1959, and I was in high school, and I actually saw when snow fell on this, it got so heavy, and it fell on the ground. And also you see Davis Hotel over there. That location was a hotel since 1885. 1930, Douglas Street School was built, and the Cherokee Avenue School was built as elementary schools, and they stayed that way until the 1970s when the new schools were built, and Douglas Street School was torn down, and then Cherokee Avenue School, which was almost identical, is still there, and it's now owned by the county, and they use it for county offices. And this was the original Summer Hill High School building. It was originally built by private individuals in the late 1800s. Later, the city of Catersville incorporated the black community schools into the city of Catersville school system and built a new building. And I don't know what happened to that building. It may have been where the later Summer Hill building was built. And this was in the 1930s, the gymnasium that went with the Cherokee Avenue School and the high school that was still located there on Cherokee Avenue. And then this burned in the 1980s, I think, but it was used by the city recreation department for their recreation programs after the school no longer used it. This is Mr. and Ms. Ben Overstreet, who had their plane at the city of Catersville Airport. And the city of Catersville Airport in the 40s and sometime into the 50s was located where the movie theater is now. It later moved from there to somewhere out on Burnt Hickory Road, and then they built where it is now. Brabant Hotel, this was originally the St. James Hotel. They took the balconies down, they stuccoed it, they enlarged it, and it was the social gathering place. I graduated from high school in the 1960s, and if you wanted to go to a fancy place for a meal, you went to the Brabant Hotel, and in that restaurant they had tablecloths, white tablecloths, fancy. But it got in the way. City bought it after it was closed down, and the city tore it down. That's all I'll say about that. And next door to that was the Seal Hotel, and this operated for many years next door to the Brabant. And the city bought it and used it as a City Hall annex during the 1970s, and it too got in the way and the city tore it down. It's a parking lot now. Pardon me. If my feelings come out, you know. This is the Davis Hotel that was the site of a hotel for 1885. Since 1885, it had many different names. This is what it looked like. I hate to admit this. This is what it looked like when I bought it in the 1970s. And I operated it as a flop house. And then it got condemned, and I sold it to somebody, and they tore it down. I found this on the internet. I just think it's so interesting. I had to include it. In 1934, there were strikes all over the South in textile mills. And apparently, the folks at ATCO were upset with management. And they were doing some things that caused then Governor Eugene Talmadge to send National Guard to ATCO, and they actually put machine guns up on top of the ATCO building, and they quelled any further violence. I just thought that was interesting. And this is 1938 police department. The only reason I included, I want you to see, there were 4 members. There were 4 officers. I've got a picture, 2 pictures in the 1950s. Early 1950s, there were 7 officers. Late 1950s, there were 8. I checked just to see if I could find out how many there are now, and the latest figures I saw was 2022, and they had 58. So this is a 1949 aerial photograph, and you see the 1903 Gold Dome Courthouse up there, and then you can see on the depot, and let's see, Irwin Street comes down the middle right here, and you can see there was a house, the houses there, and anyway, it's an interesting picture. I found this as a publication in 1944 about wartime activity. This photograph was taken from Reservoir Hill looking toward Catersville, and you can see there was, right now, you got, from there you got Highway 41, what we call the 4-lane, because it was only 4-lane in the state of Georgia at the time, is right in there, but you can see how much Catersville's grown. 1953, the Catersville High School was built, and this, I think, was taken in 1963. You see, 53, I mean. The auditorium's not there, the gymnasium's not there, and there's absolutely no landscaping. Waste of money. Little League started by the city recreation department in 1952. In 1954, the teams got their first uniforms, and I want to show you.
Oh, you in there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Well, wait a minute. I'll just show you. That was the best player. He was the best player on all those teams. He also was the smallest. So, I don't know. The only reason I included that is because I'm in it. This is what the depot looked like in 1972 until a city crew went in and tore down everything from, you see that chimney up there? Maybe 40 feet or so south of that. That's all the archways there, that's the original 1854 depot. It was torn down in 1973 to make more parking. And the city did that. Dellinger Park was completed in 1976. It was donated, originally the property was donated by the Dellinger family. Since then, there was more property donated. It's been enlarged, and then a few years later, when Sam Smith was mayor, the Sam Smith Park was bought, and of course, Dellinger Park is a class place. The pools, tennis courts, you name it, it's all there. And then a major event in 1977 is I-75 was completed through Bartow County. For years, it had been delayed by a group of college professors, botanists, who had discovered a little bitty fish named the Edward darter. And it only existed in tributaries to the Etowah River. And it was about to be ruined if we built this bridge where they intended to build it. So they stopped construction for 10 years? Something like that. But it was completed in 1977, and it was a big deal. Because up until that time, East Main Street was a dirt street. And the only thing you had on it was a 100-foot hole where they were mining, and the garbage dump was over there where Kroger is now. So a lot's happened. In 1983, the most controversial bridge in Bartow County was built. That's this building, you see how it looked then. But it was very controversial. Families lost friends over it. I mean, some people call it that damn John Dent bridge. They did. But I think it's been a good addition. 1986, the new City Hall was constructed. And I will say the city constructed that without borrowing any money. They had reserves at the time. But that building's in the way. It'll be torn down soon. In the mid-1990s, a major event happened. And that is the Downtown Development Authority was run, executive director, a woman named Ann Arnold, made an application for a grant. And it was awarded. And that grant not only gave the money to acquire and restore the old depot, what was left of it, and what you see is the part that was built in the 1920s. That little bitty part on the end over there is what built in 1854 that's gone now. But Ann Arnold's grant gave the city of Catersville the funds, and also, and most people don't know this, the State Properties Commission owned all of Public Square. They owned where that depot was. They owned all the streets that where Public Square is, from Young Brothers all the way down to this bridge, this building. They owned all that, and they leased it to the railroad. The railroad could have done anything they wanted to do with it, but Ann Arnold put that grant application, and the result of it was the city got funds to restore this building. They got funds to restore this building, partially. And they got a deed to the entire Public Square. No longer was it subject to the whims of the railroad that leased it from the state. No longer was it subject to the whims of any state legislator who wanted to try to do something in downtown Catersville that we wouldn't want. Now the city of Catersville owns it. That's a big deal. That's one of the biggest deals that's happened. This is a list of mayors, and it's interesting. You see the list. Sam Smith is the last one on there because this was done when we had the sesquicentennial 150 years celebration in the year 2000. Since then, the only mayors, help me, tell me if I'm wrong, if I've got anybody. Since then, we had Mike Fields and Matt Santini. I think that's it. Two since 2000. That's pretty good. Pine Mountain is one of the major achievements I think the city of Catersville did. And it came about as a donation from a group of people who were descendants of people who mined that whole area, 4,000 acres I think they owned, and sold some to Komatsu. They made a lot of profit out of selling the property to Komatsu. They wanted a tax deduction, and so they donated it to the city of Catersville, and the city funded to build the parks, the trails that were completed in 2009. And now that's the last photograph I've got, but I'll tell you, it's not all that has happened in the city of Catersville. I may criticize some things about tearing buildings down that I wish had not been torn down. But I'll tell you this, if it weren't for the city of Catersville, we wouldn't own Public Square. We wouldn't have that depot restored as it is. We wouldn't have this building restored as it is. And we wouldn't have so many other things that the city's done. The Aquatic Center, Sam Smith Park. I understand they've taken the old store building at Atco and converted it into an event center. So, I fuss about the city about some things, but I am proud of the city of Catersville for the things it's done. Thank you. Thank you.
Amen to what they've done about this building. David, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm sure David has lots of great stories if you want to stick around and ask questions or hear some of the more colorful stories that you didn't share with us.
I can't tell those.
Thank you all for coming out this evening. Just a quick last minute details. If you haven't been upstairs to see our permanent exhibits, please go up there and check those out while you're here. We'll stay open another half hour or so to let you do that. Check out our exhibit, our new exhibit tonight, 175 years, 175 objects. If anybody counts them, if you find more than 175, you get a prize. There's more refreshments out in the hallway. Logan is here from the city. He's got some city swag out here on the table that you're welcome to pick up. And we're also selling 1850 t-shirts and Catersville new tote bags that just came in this week in our gift shop. So check those out as well. Thank you all for coming out this evening. We'll see you again soon.